Serious, have you ever had a close friend become a murderer? How did you deal with it? A family friend did. His ex-wife had custody of his son. Her boyfriend beat the shit out of him a couple times. The boyfriend eventually broke the son's arm, which was the last straw for him. After the boyfriend made bail for his latest episode, the family friend went over to the ex-wife's house and beat the boyfriend to death. He got off on a relatively light sentence, and honestly I can't really blame him, so it's not like anyone who knows him shuns him. I had a drinking/party buddy I made right after I got out of the Navy. I'll call him Bob. Met him at work. He seemed a good guy. I got pretty close with him and his brothers. We would go fishing and generally drank and partied a lot. One time he hit his GF in front of me in a gas station parking lot. We all had been drinking, and I got up in his face and pulled him away. He was angry and told me it was not my business, and during our arguing his GF got in her car and left. I met my wife while he and I were still close. Bob would bust my chops about having gone mad due to hanging with my GF all of the time. He said I was pussy whipped, etc. It was always in a joking manner. I had not seen him in a few months and I ran into his older brother, Rufus. I asked how Bob was, and Rufus said he was in jail awaiting trial for murder. He said Bob had been attacked by a different GF, and that this GF's uncle and brother had joined in with a bat, and during the course of the fight the GF pulled a knife and tried to stab him, but he got it away from her, and in the ensuing melee she was stabbed and died. He told me about a fish fry church was holding as a fundraiser for Bob's defense the following Sunday, and said I should attend. I agreed to be there. Prior to that Sunday I ran into another mutual friend, Warren, and asked if he had heard about Bob's self-defense fundraiser. Warren laughed nervously and said, self-defense? I said yes, and repeated the story Rufus has shared. Warren considered this, and then told me Bob had stabbed the girl 19 times. I was a little floored by this. I did not go to the fundraiser because it seemed way awkward, and in my heart it rang true, based on the anger issues Bob had displayed before. This was in 1989, and he is still in Angola State Penitentiary. I posted this a while back, but here it is again. When I was in 8th grade we had our desks grouped together in 4s for math. Anyway, my paper was slipping between the cracks in the desk, and so I went to catch it. When I did, my pencil in my hand scratched the person in the desk connected to mine on his hand. When it did, he completely lost his cool and stabbed me with full force in the chest with a pencil. My reaction was to stab him in the wrist my pencil. It was pure adrenaline from the situation and I don't condone that action. Fast forward 3 years and the small town is buzzing with the news of a murder in one of the neighborhoods. The same boy who stabbed me in the chest snuck onto a wooded bike path with a box cutter in his booksack. He then attacked a 5-year-old boy by cutting his throat with the box cutter. The young boy had a twin and they were both adopted by the same family. Both adoptive parents were doctors. The boy who was killed has written a little bit ahead of his family on their right. By the time they caught up he was already dead and the attacker was gone. This is a guy that I played soccer with 4 years growing up, and even though we had our ups and downs he still hung out in our circle. I had been to his house a few times. I took it hard. We live in a very small town and it's all anyone spoke about for months. He is now at Angola serving life. 2 people I was friends with in high school. John and Amy were high school sweethearts and went to the same college. She broke up with him right before Christmas break. The next week, they were both in our hometown for break and were at the same party. They got into a huge fight out in the street. He stabbed her in the head 14 times, put her in the trunk of his car, and drove off. He stopped at a gas station to fill up, presumably to flee the state. She somehow regained consciousness, released the emergency latch in the trunk, and went running and screaming to the gas station store. John ran. Clark called 911. She was life-flighted to the hospital. He was caught and is now in prison for life for attempted murder. Despite being stabbed in the brain 14 times and many brain surgeries, she survived and has completely recovered. I had a friend who committed murder/suicide. He was deeply in debt. His life was a complete mess. One night he decided to drive against the traffic to kill himself. Reports say that he was intentionally attempting to drive into other cars. Eventually he succeeded and killed a father of 2 and himself. Me and my friends were shocked, but all think he was a coward. He wanted it to be quick and looked like an accident, so he took a life and ruined a family in order to kill himself that way. It was selfish, and as hard as it sounds, he receives very little sympathy from anyone. I was close friends with an employee who had drug and alcohol issues. He and his girlfriend, who he wasn't in love with, accidentally had a child and moved in together. At 2 months, the baby had some type of breathing problem that was being treated with antibiotics, but one night apparently stopped breathing and died in his sleep. It was a full 2 years later when my friend was arrested for the child's murder and quickly pleaded guilty to 2nd degree. To this day, I still don't know what evidence they had on him, and it was never made public because it never went to trial. I knew he didn't want to be a father at the time, but it's still hard to imagine him intentionally killing that child. My friend in college accidentally shot her boyfriend in the head with a pistol. It sounds weird, but they were messing around with it at home, and it went off and hit him in the face and killed him instantly. She originally told the police that he'd done it by mistake, but she later confessed to have been playing with it and not knowing it was loaded. They were planning a beach trip later that week and had just moved in together. She loved the hell out of him, and it was really sad. The lawyer said he handed her a pistol which she started to examine, and he had told her, "Let me make it safe," and took the clip out of it. He gave it back to her and said, "Now you can play with it." I would surmise that they had left a round in the chamber, and that is the one that discharged, and unfortunately it struck him in the head and killed him. A year later, they are still listed as being in a relationship on Facebook. Her profile picture is a memorial image of him, and she only has a few people that keep up with her regularly. She went off the rails a bit, for understandable reasons, and I think this will haunt her forever. She wanted to be a doctor, which won't happen, and she was on a scholarship that was rescinded by the uni. It didn't impact me at all, so I didn't have to deal with it. I was just sad for her that this had happened, and sad that it ended something that was supposed to last a happy lifetime. One of my drill sergeants who everyone liked. He was your typical DS, but funny, and he had his cool moments. If he smoked the living shit out of a group or someone, he made sure to have spectators laughing. He was a good DS all and all. I even got to hang out with him during my 8 had a weekend pass. He saw me and 2 of my buddies walking. He stopped, picked us up, and we drove around, partied with him. Awesome time. Few years later on Facebook, a battle buddy posted an article stating that the same very cool DS who I once looked up to became a shitbag. Didn't show up to his job, didn't care anymore, got kicked out the army, was being a bum in his army GF house. She wanted him out, and he ended up strangling the poor woman. He left the body upstairs and tried to cover up the smell with scents. He would go out, bring girls home, hook up with them on the couch. The ladies were interviewed, and they even stated that the house had a very strong scent of what seemed like car fresheners. He later dumped the body out in the front lawn and pretended he didn't know what was going on and acted shocked. He went to jail, and during trial he bragged to one of his cellmates that he did it, and they ain't gonna catch him cause he had a team of all-star lawyers backing him. He was wrong. This was 5 years ago or so. Still makes me think, like, damn, fucking guy was normal and somewhat of a role model, molding young people to be soldiers. I had a best friend from age 7 to 14. She was always kind of manipulative and aggressive. We stopped being friends at age 14 when I realized she was stealing from me. I still had to see her till age 17 though, cause we were on the same soccer team. Let's just say it wasn't fun. She did not like being caught. Fast forward 10 years or so, and I find out she is in jail awaiting trial for gang-related murder. This was a shock to me, because we grew up in an affluent neighborhood with no gang activity. Turns out she had started dating the wrong guy. She's technically being charged with accessory to murder, because her role was to track the person down and tell someone where he was so they could do it. But still, such a shock to me. I work in a jail now as part of the mental health team, and it's so weird to me that I know someone living this life. And looking back, there were so many warning signs that she was unstable, but this ending still really surprised me. I played baseball with a kid who had an older brother who was an exceptional athlete. He set all kinds of rushing records in football and was an excellent wrestler, but was a psycho. He would intentionally hurt his opponent in wrestling. A few years after he graduated from high school, he and his mother got into an argument, and he strangled her. The police found him in a local bar drinking. When they arrested him, he said, "Boy, my dad's going to be mad." Yes. One of my best friends in high school ended up murdering his girlfriend. He was one of the most loyal, kind and funny guys I knew at the time. He had been in the foster system his entire life, and was in the aging out process. We actually lived together for a very short amount of time, and he showed almost no signs of aggression towards myself or anyone else. I remember getting a phone call one night from a mutual friend telling me to turn on the news right away. I saw his face on the screen saying that the police were looking for him, and his girlfriend had been found abandoned in a parking lot after being hit with a blunt object. He had stolen her car and fled. She unfortunately went into a coma and died a week later. It was a complete shock to me and all of his other friends. For a while I thought that maybe he didn't actually do it, and was in complete denial that someone so open and caring could do anything so violent. He ended up getting a life sentence at the age of 21 for it. I remember what really bothered me was that the media portrayed him as illiterate and uneducated, which couldn't be farther from the truth. I've considered visiting him, maybe writing to him, but I just don't know what to say to him. A close family friend of ours / church member of the church I grew up in, who was also my dad's landlord for a while, snapped one morning and ended up stabbing his girlfriend to death, and then her 11-year-old son, who also went to our church. He was an ex-boxer and was supposed to give me a lesson that day, but when I knocked on his door there was no answer, so I just chilled at my dad's and waited. Turns out the other side of the door were the bodies of that lady and her son. He left after the murder and called my dad maybe a few hours later, confessed, and turned himself in. I never heard from him or of him again. Edit. I forgot they were actually married shortly before the murder, so she was his wife at the time. A kid in my study hall murdered a random neighbor in cold blood last year. This kid was a monster. There was a video of him burning what looked like a cat's body. The story is he killed the cat, then burnt it and filmed it. The kid was your standard quiet nerdy kid, really obsessed with guns and the army, even into junior year high school. The official report was he left his house at 9 p.m, went to a park connected to his neighborhood, then shot a random dog walker 4 times before leaving his body where the man dropped dead. The kid had this huge bushy beard for all of high school. Then the next day after killing him, he showed up to class smooth shaven. It is really eerie knowing a killer was sitting 3 tables down from me. He got called out and escorted from campus literally the next period. He apparently had a journal with writings saying he wanted to bomb the school's pep rallies, kill specific people, and generally horrible things. Oh shit, I finally can tell this story. I dated this guy for about 6 months and moved in with him essentially on the first date. I know, bad idea. He had some warning signs. He was always angry, sad and drunk. One time he stole my car, etc. But I was doing a lot of drugs and didn't notice / care. Anyway, I finally got clean, and a week later I decided I didn't want to be dating an alcoholic, so I broke up with him after asking to cut down on drinking for about a month. He did not take it well, so I agreed to stay friends. A week later, I was driving him to his dad's house and get a call from our roommate, who tells me that he was in prison for almost 2 decades for murdering his mother and had lied to us about everything. I did not handle it well. I managed to drop him off and take his key, but then pulled over about a mile from his dad's house and broke down. I had a lot of trouble with feeling safe after that, because a guy who killed his mom could sure as hell kill his ex. I wanted to turn to stone because of how afraid I was all the time. I moved, got a new job, got a new car, and changed my hair, but it still took several years to not worry all the time. My current boyfriend is an amazing and gentle man who was there through all of this, so he is really great about not being insulted when I insinuate he is a sociopath pretending to love me, so it will be more satisfying when he kills me. You know, normal relationship things. Seriously though, it took a long time, but I finally feel safe again.